I want you to imagine the concept of completing a Dark Souls game without taking any hits from a single enemy, from character creation to seeing the credits roll. This is something over time that's become more and more popular, and if you aren't new to this channel, you will know I'm no stranger to participating in this madness. There isn't many things that you can do on a game of any sort that will give you the feeling of accomplishing something of this nature, but there are certainly ways to go even further beyond. Eventually, throughout the history of us Souls content creators pushing the boundaries of what was originally deemed as impossible, we've reached a point where the marathon run was introduced. The Happy Hob, Twitch streamer, was the originator of this idea and will forever be remembered as the first person to complete the whole Dark Souls trilogy back to back without taking a single hit on any enemy. Once this was accomplished, it was only natural for others to try similar feats, which brings us to the current landscape of challenge running. At the very peak of this ambitious summit, it would be completing Demon Souls, the Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, without any hits whatsoever. Of course, this was completed, but my biggest question has always been, when will it be too much? Of course, diehard fans as a spectator would welcome these runs as long as someone can provide them, but for the runners, is there actually a point where it's no longer appealing? We're going to dive a bit deeper into my experience with this subject. Marathon runs are a topic that I get asked about quite a bit, and though I have completed some of them, there's a lot out there that are even bigger. I personally completed the Dark Souls trilogy hitless, well leveled and at level 1. The rules were as follows. A hit is a stagger or damage caused by an enemy or boss, and any player-triggered trap. A friendly character turned hostile or moving enemy falling on your head from a ledge, resulting in a stagger, still counts too. Static things like water with poison, toxicity, or fire that is not caused by an enemy or gravity damage are fine, so long as the status effect build-up bar does not max out. No major speedrun skips or glitches are allowed. A major skip is defined by remaining within the boundaries of the playable game and using shortcuts, such as the skip to get to Ornstein and Smo in Anor Londo, where you jump over a handrail on the first set of the spiraling stairs you encounter within the interior of the chapel in order to avoid going on the rooftop and through another staircase section. The Seath the Scaleless death on the first encounter is developer intended, therefore Duke Skip, a trick that lets you jump from the elevator to a handrail and skip the Seath encounter altogether, is not used on the run. Without the Duke Skip, you would have to allow the regular progression of the prisoner escape sequence, where you're put in a jail cell and need to disable the alarm after breaking out. As for level 1, the additional elements of no leveling the character were added. You would be choosing the Pyromancer starting class on Dark Souls 1 and Deprived on Dark Souls 2 and 3. Following hitless runs later down the road, I decided to do the Dark Souls series damageless, which means no reduction of health from the character at any point in time, with the addition of having to do the Duke Skip on Dark Souls 1. Which is a trick on the elevator handrail mentioned before. Typically used in speedruns to save time, in damageless, it allows you to avoid the guaranteed scripted death that's required to bring you to the next section. This is essentially the perfect run of the trilogy, and was by far one of the most satisfying runs I've ever accomplished. I had dabbled in the idea of running Demon Souls, Dark Souls trilogy, and Bloodborne back-to-back for a 5-game run of what was the entire of the Souls series games that FromSoft had created at that point, with the special condition that once Sekiro released, I would put down the run to play that instead. Sekiro quickly became my favorite game at the time, and though I didn't include this in the damageless marathon I had embarked on beforehand, I did complete a run that was damageless on it with some extra conditions, like still requiring perfect parries, which means if you block it all, you fail the run. I think switching to focusing on Sekiro for the time being was a very good decision, because I was able to get quite a few things achieved on that, but people wondered, would I go back to getting the achievement of 5 games back-to-back hitless? At the time, my personal best was getting hit on game 4 out of 5 of the previous mentioned Soulsborne games prior to Sekiro releasing, and I had about 75 to 80% of the run being completed in total. The only game remaining at the very end was Bloodborne, and my personal best attempt so far was on Old Monk of Demon Souls on game 4. He somehow snagged me with a very janky backstab and ended an amazing run up to that point, but deep down I knew I wasn't at the skill level to be 100% confident for the end of Demon Souls. It was, and still is, my least favorite of the series, and I had a very negative relationship with the prospect of practicing it. This was largely due to the game's environment stretching super far distances before any sort of checkpoint. For those who aren't familiar, you have to run a very long time before you find any checkpoint in those games, versus Dark Souls being extremely generous with how many bonfires you encounter in one given area. I remember seeing a ton of complaints in Dark Souls 3 about there being too many bonfires. More is always better when challenge running the games though, for a couple different reasons. If a strategy you had planned to get through an area fails you, you immediately have more options for improvisation and can save yourself from getting hit in so many different scenarios. Even on just a deathless run or a speed run, this can help beginners, but most importantly for practicing certain strategies over and over, or testing different types of kills on enemies that respawn. This allows you to not have to use save files on the cloud service for consoles or save state organizer on PC. With that being said, Demon Souls in particular was even more brutal than Bloodborne with how sparse the archstones were. Areas like Shrine of Storms is known to be so much more challenging to run through than to simply just fight the boss Adjudicator. It was possible that I could have completed the hitless gauntlet of those 5 games back to back in the past, but I just hadn't put nearly as much practice into Demon Souls. I ran it for a total span of a couple months before Sekiro and never went back. After Sekiro was completed, I had the idea of revisiting the 5 Soulsborne games and upgrading the run by completing all 5 back to back, but this time damageless. At this point, I had never even done a hitless run of Demon Souls, so instead of completing that first, I skipped right into doing damageless on the new remake of the game that had come out for PS5. That version, though extremely similar in gameplay, made the love for the game come back much stronger than before. I actually didn't mind it at all at the time, and my mentality for just practicing things in general was much better. So with that being said, it was time for me to start attempting the same 5 games, with the new Demon Souls replacing the original, and the overall strategy being quite clear because I had already completed a damageless run of the new Demon Souls by itself. Eventually, after a while of going through the process, I had started to have a change of heart about many things with this type of content overall. There was a point I reached where the realization of live streaming for so many hours on end every day just to get the run really affected my ability to keep that joy for the idea that led me to it. I don't think as humans it's smart to make an elective goal a straight up job. Sure, you could be a full-time content creator and take it seriously, but when you aren't having enjoyment for the idea anymore that inspired you, and you're really just going through the motions of getting it done so it can be over, well, that really changes things. I decided to make the decision to stop running these types of marathon challenges altogether for the foreseeable future, and this alone was one of the best decisions I've made as a content creator, despite how the audience might feel about not getting to see me complete those massive runs. I also decided to take more breaks from feeling the need to be active on my live stream for 40+ hours a week, and the mental health benefits and other awesome things that took place after this only made the enjoyment for streaming itself much greater, and reminded me of why I started it in the first place. I think trusting in the passion and joy for what I create through finding the balance in overall life is a huge takeaway for this video. As a person that has an extreme dedication to the things that I love, and such unreasonable amount of stubbornness at times, it's easy to be my own worst enemy. These types of huge endeavors for gaming actually gave me some insight into other things of a similar nature that needed to be adjusted in my life outside of content. The truth of the matter is that when you sit for 8+ hours most days of the week on end, just grinding away at the same task on those back-to-back runs, the small victories are really what you're celebrating. But what you lose is all the expression of self in your content that you could be building upon, and the ideas that you can materialize become less and less because time itself is not in your favor. People would come into chat and notice the viewer count on good runs was the highest average view count I've ever held, particularly on the back-to-back runs, and were happy for me and also saw it as the best choice for my growth in content from their perspective. I originally saw it like that in the very beginning, but quickly realized that it's a double-edged sword. Simply doing the thing that gets you the most views on a live stream, even though that was a bonus at the time, is just not a good enough reason alone to continue doing it for the bigger picture. Building a community that's strong and a network of platforms in harmony is really my ultimate goal, and was before I got into any of these challenges. I was losing sight of using Twitch as a tool to engage with people and introduce new ideas more frequently, which was something I did way more often in the early days of streaming. With the YouTube channel being established at this point, I also started to notice that anytime I would make a video like this, where I sit and write a script and talk about subjects I enjoy, it brought me such a level of satisfaction without much downside at all, especially in the essence of time. Because of that realization, down the road, it means more content for you guys and less periods of waiting for that next world record or world's first run. Speedrunning did the exact same thing to me, although a lot quicker, and it's very alluring to invest all your free time into refining those skills when your goal is to be the best at the time or better than your previous self. More recently, I got to an even more beautiful place of being totally free from the anxiety and fear of streaming that some of the most confident and established creators have in the back of their mind constantly. The fear that if they stop or slow down, it's over, and their efforts are only as good as the newest peak metric, or that people in chat's opinions of wanting them to be live every day should dictate some of their ideals. The fear of these things can be very subtle, and they can hold you back until you completely let go of them. It was nice to be okay with the idea of still doing content, but never requiring my life to be ran by Twitch as a sole reliance, rather than just focusing on live content and videos I enjoy. Now, I don't plan to quit streaming altogether at all, and would love to always have it as an outlet. Life outside the streams and videos improved a ton when I took breaks from it, and it was possible to reinvest this fresh mindset back into content. Freeing up some of the mental bandwidth that's required for engaging with people while live or making videos allowed me to study and learn much more about the back end of content creation behind the scenes, and have a better understanding on how different types of genres or industries work as well. And also how people think that have successful operations of all sorts, not just my particular niche. With some of the extra time as a pure bonus, I rekindled the joy I had for skateboarding and even got better with some tricks than when I was younger very, very quickly. It was possible for me to put my focus into studies of many different sorts that culminated in me finding some of the most impactful books I've ever read in my life and truly were essential in my own life journey. Since 2023, I've been offering online coaching for fitness and nutrition in the gaming community, and some of the transformations and results I've seen from you guys truly has been the most fulfilling feeling I've had connecting with people online. My passion for music increased even more recently. This also led to a much bigger passion for music than I had had in the past, and now I can't imagine being without it. I had always posted the odd guitar cover and some video game music on the main YouTube channel you're watching right this moment. But my love for playing the drums was a new discovery that I felt obligated to go at full force, and by the end of this year, the goal was to have made an impact through that instrument in a similar way I have with the guitar. My progression of improving on drums with the addition of guitar, bass, and eventually vocals is available on Squilla Tunes, linked in the description and shown on the screen. Trying new things is something that I've always done, and is part of the way that I navigate life. To understand I need to experience first, and doubling down on the things that bring joy is something that we all benefit from. At the end of the day, I'm not done doing runs that are cool on Souls-like games and other titles, whether that is hitless, damageless, a speedrun, or something super wacky and weird. In a way, I feel like we're just getting started, and that's extremely exciting. I'm going to take this opportunity to say thank you for all the love that you guys show me, and I can only hope that it's being reciprocated through my efforts. I have no regrets for the time I did spend on these Goliaths, and I have nothing but respect for those who continue to do such things and still find their own balance. There still might be some ridiculous runs that take longer to complete in the future on this channel, but only if I can justify fitting it into the bigger picture of making various types of content and growing as a person simultaneously. There are so many cool things in the works for this particular channel and the others, but in the meantime, leave a comment on what kind of stuff that you want to see more of and what topics you want me to discuss or break down. Be well, and I'll see you guys in the next video.